everyone. Today we are going to be talking all about elephants. We are For Elephants, a nonprofit based here in Omaha. And this is us. I'm Emmy, the intern, and I'm going to be asking our elephant experts, Mackenzie and Lindy, all about elephants. So we're going to be answering our own questions, sort of, and we're going to be talking all about elephants, and hopefully you guys will learn a couple of new and interesting things about them. But first, I'll give us our two fun facts to begin with. Elephants are the largest land animal in the world, and they are the only animals with a trunk. But we are going to learn so much more about these guys today. So my first question for you guys is, where do elephants live, and what types of environments do they live in? Mackenzie, you want to answer it?
So there are two main species of elephants, African and Asian. Just like their species name suggests, they live in Africa and in Asia. So African elephants live generally right around the equator, all around in the Serengeti, and then Asian elephants live in India and China, and a lot of other countries over there too. There are multiple subspecies of each Asian and African.
What kind of environment do they live in? Is it hot, cold, dry, wet? Lindy?
So they generally live in hotter environments. As you can see, they're kind of centered around the equator, which runs through the middle of the map here. So though they can tolerate colder environments, they do tend to be found in those warmer environments. And then Asian elephants, you'll find them in more jungles where there's a lot of trees. It's usually pretty humid. And then African elephants, as you can see, can be found across most of the continent of Africa. And we'll talk about this more, but there's two different kinds of African elephants, and one lives in the savannas, which are like grasses and open plains, and then the other ones will live in the African forests.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question is, who are elephants related to? And I can answer this one. So we're going to be thinking about phylogenetic trees today. So if you've taken some science classes, you might have heard of this, but this is one of the ways that we can look at how closely different species are related. So in this practice tree, we have a couple of different animals up here, and one of the ways that this tree is organized is by certain physical characteristics that some species share. So in this tree, the bald eagle and the alligator would be really closely related, whereas the alligator is a little bit more distantly related to the lamprey or the sea bass. So all this stuff is hopefully pretty easy to see on this tree. So essentially when you're looking at is things that are closer together and have a shorter branch are more closely related to each other. So if we're to look at our real tree, where we're thinking about elephants today, you can see that these three elephants up here are really closely related to each other. So this is the woolly mammoth up there, and then we've got our two types of elephants down here. But also really closely related to elephants are the elephant shrew and the manatee. Manatees are really cool species. They're kind of like sea elephants or sea cows. They are really closely related to elephants, even though they live in the water. So that's something that's really interesting about phylogenetic trees and evolution, is that sometimes species that don't necessarily look a lot like each other or act a lot like each other can be really closely related. My next question is, what do elephants eat? Mackenzie, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so elephants eat in human care anywhere between 200 and 300 pounds of food every day, and in the wild they can eat up to about 700 pounds of food. The difference there, in the wild their food is generally a little less nutritious, and so they have to find more of it to meet all of their needs. And they eat lots of grasses and trees, and then they'll eat the entire tree, so leaves and branches, and they'll strip off the bark and they'll eat the whole tree down. This is a really important part of their ecosystem. Since they do live in the grasses in the savanna, trees can easily take over those areas. So by elephants ripping them down and eating them, they continue to keep that wide grassland. And then also in human care, they eat lots of different kind of produce. So they eat bananas and corn, sweet potatoes, apples, so a pretty wide variety of things.
And then do elephants eat 3 meals a day just like us, or do they snack throughout the day?
They snack a lot more throughout the day. So they can eat up to about 20 hours a day to make sure they get all the food and all the nutrients that they need.
Awesome, thank you.
In this picture you can see an elephant picking up some food and putting it in her mouth. So they use their trunks for everything that they do. They can lift logs up to about 600 pounds, but then the end of their trunk, they have little finger-like projections, and so they'll pick up even a single blade of grass, put it in their mouth, and eat it.
Our next question is, how long do elephants live? Lindy, do you want to answer this one?
Yes. So elephants can live up to 70 years old. However, it's not uncommon for them to live into their 40s and 50s, sometimes 60s as well. So they're very long-lived animals and develop at a similar pace as humans, where they are juveniles and then kind of turn into teenagers and then eventually adults.
Awesome, thank you. How do elephants sleep, and can they sleep lying down? Mackenzie, you want to take this one?
They can sleep laying down, but they also sleep standing up too. So standing up is usually a lot lighter sleep. They'll lean against something for some support and just relax and take a little cat nap. And they will lay down to sleep like that picture suggests. They're super, super cute, all curled up like that. And they'll lay down to sleep anywhere between 2 and 5 hours, where younger animals sleep a little more than adults, similar to how humans.
So how many hours a day do they sleep total?
Anywhere between 2 and 5.
2 and 5, awesome. How many teeth does an elephant have? If you guys want to take a guess, now would be the time. I would have guessed 40, but let's find out exactly how many they have. Lindy?
So they have 26 teeth total in their lifetime. So to break this down a little more, so their tusks are actually teeth. And so you can see those there in the top of the video. And so their 2 tusks count as teeth, and then they have these large molars. And so you can see in this photo how the molars sit up in their mouth, and they actually have 4 of them at one time. So they'll have 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and then they go through 6 sets of teeth in their lifetime. So if you think about you go through 2 sets of teeth in your lifetime. You have your baby teeth, you lose them, the tooth fairy comes, and then you get your adult teeth. Whereas elephants will do that 6 times as they grow and get older. And so imagine all the tooth fairy money that would come with losing that many teeth.
Do they lose their teeth like us? So we lose our teeth and then our new teeth grow up and down? Is that how they do it?
So elephants are kind of different actually. So they'll actually lose their teeth in pieces. And so the front will fall out as the new tooth kind of grows in and pushes up forward. So they kind of grow, instead of from down or from into the gums out, they kind of grow from the back of their mouth to the front of their mouth.
And are they a lot bigger than our teeth, or are they the same size?
They're much bigger. So they can range anywhere from 6 to 8 inches, even bigger in diameter. And they're very large molars, and just have 1 of them.
About the size of a house brick.
A house
Yes.
brick? That's actually crazy.
And then also what's cool about their teeth is you can see in this photo how there's ridges in it. And so these ridges help the elephants grind their food more and be able to break down all those grasses and trees and anything they're eating. And so that's how they chew their food.
Awesome. How do elephants walk? And do they walk on their feet or on their tippy toes?
So elephants walk on the very, very tips of their toes. So just like horses, they have toes in their foot, and then each nail pairs with a toe. And on the back of their feet, they have a thick, fatty cushion to help support all of their weight. So when you watch an elephant walk, you see it step forward, and as they put their foot down, that cushion expands, and so their feet look a lot bigger. This helps them support their joints and stay healthy for their long lives as they wander across the savannah.
Cool. How do elephants communicate?
So there's a number of ways that elephants communicate. The most obvious one is through their ears. So just like us, how you listen through your ears, elephants can listen through theirs. However, part of the reason why they have such big ears is it helps kind of funnel that sound into to the actual opening. So they can pick up sounds from far distances just partially by using their ears.
That's awesome. And do they make their noise through their trunk or through their mouth?
Depends on the noise. So elephants, when they trumpet, that is kind of created by their vocal cords, and it vibrates through their trunk a little bit. But they do a really low rumbling noise, and that actually resonates in their head space. So like when humans hum and you can kind of feel that right in the front of your forehead, very similar. That's how elephants make their rumbling noise.
Awesome.
So the next way they can communicate is actually through their feet, which is fairly unique to elephants, but it's super interesting. So when an elephant makes that rumbling sound, like Mackenzie talked about, the vibrations will actually travel through the ground, and then the elephants can actually pick that up in that soft fatty tissue in their feet and then be detected by the other elephant. So it's a really unique way to communicate and for them to communicate from very far distances with each other. And then the last way to communicate is with touch. So you can see in this photo they're doing trunk to mouth, which is a very like positive greeting. It's saying hello, I'm here, and so that they really have a lot of communication by using their trunks and by like leaning against each other, and just that physical touch is a really special way for them to connect and communicate.
Awesome. What types of elephants are there? So we've talked a little bit about how there's Asian elephants and African elephants. What are the differences between them, and how can we tell them apart?
So this photo gives a really great shot at the difference between Asians and Africans. The biggest difference, the most notable, are their ears. So an African elephant, they're really, really large, and if you look closely, it's kind of shaped like the continent of Africa. When Asian elephants, their ears are much smaller, and if you look closely, they're kind of shaped like the continent or the country of India. A couple other differences, if you look at the forehead on Asian elephants, you can see kind of two domes, where Africans only have one. And then the other big things, if you look at their back, not great shot on this African elephant here, but African elephants have a scoop in their back, where Asian elephants have more of a hump. And at the end of their trunks, Asian elephants have one finger and the kind of a palm at the bottom of their trunk, or African elephants have 2 fingers. So they're able to grab things a little more easily.
So there are 2 species of African elephants, like I mentioned earlier. So we have the savanna African elephants, which are pictured there on the left. And so they generally tend to be bigger, have the bigger ears, and of course you're going to find them out in the savanna where it's more open and there's more grasses. And then there's also the African forest elephants, and so they're going to be found more in treesy areas, raised for branches. They also tend to be a little smaller compared to the savanna counterparts.
Go ahead.
Their tusks are also a little different. Savanna elephants, like this picture shows it really well, they go really far forward and kind of out, where forest elephants tend to be pointed more downward. As they're wandering through the forest, their tusks could get in the way, and so having them more forward allows them to still use them but not get caught up in the trees.
Do girl elephants and boy elephants have tusks, or just the boy elephants for the girl elephants?
So it depends on the species. So Asian elephants, the males will have the big tusks, whereas the females will have no visible tusks, or they'll be very small if they do. And then the African elephants, both males and females, will have tusks.
So how can we tell apart the males and the females?
So generally males are going to be larger body size is going to be the biggest indicator. So they'll be very bulky, grow very big, very tall. So that's going to be the easiest way to tell them apart.
Awesome. How do elephants socialize? And do elephants make good friends? Mackenzie or Lynn, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, so the elephant social structure is just a really cool, unique, it's just really cool and unique to the species. So they usually stay within family groups, especially with the mothers and daughters and sisters. They tend to stay close together throughout most, if not all, of their lifetime. And so you have a matriarchal line with a matriarch, and the matriarch's generally an older female who's had a lot of experience, knows where all the food sources are, knows how to find water, And so she'll be leading her family group in the herd to find these resources. So then the males, they'll stay with the herd for a long time for while they're growing and developing. And then as they start hitting their teenage years, they start going off and they'll kind of wander between groups. So if you want to go to the next one. And so what this is called a fission fusion society. And so these different colored circles. So if you look at the circle on the left, and then you can see how there's some different groups. So this one group, the light gray, that would be one family group. The darker gray would be another family group. And the darkest gray, would be another family group. And so they'll kind of fuse into like one big herd for a while, depending on what resources are available and where they're traveling. And so you might have these giant herds of elephants that are composed of smaller groups. And then you can have multiple of those. And then sometimes, if you see everybody in this photo, they'll combine into one large herd if there's enough resources available in that area. And so really, there's dynamics kind of change throughout their lifetime, just depending on circumstances.
Awesome.
So then with, like we were kind of saying, so you also have these multi-generational herds as well, meaning that you have older elephants, adult elephants, juvenile elephants, and then babies. And so you have these, mix of ages so the young ones can learn from the older ones, and, you'll get males in there and females, and it's just very, there's a lot of different dynamics to their herds.
So what about male elephants? And we call those bulls. Mackenzie, do you want to talk about them?
Yeah, so like Lindy just talked about, females tend to stick together throughout their whole lives. And then as bulls grow up and they kind of reach sexual maturity and come into their teenage years, they will split off and they form bachelor herds. They're a lot more loose-knit, and the younger ones kind of hang out together with the older bulls nearby. And as those older bulls kind of hang out with them, they'll teach them what it's like to be a male elephant, how to respond appropriately, how to hang out with females once they reach that age. And so that kind of grouping is really, really important so that they know how to interact throughout their lifetime as they grow older.
Awesome. And then lastly, we're going to talk about what we at For Elephant study. So we study hormones, and that is called endocrinology and wildlife endocrinology. So we do a lot with elephants in the wild, but we also do a lot with elephants in zoos. Linda, you want to talk a little bit more about what we study?
Yeah, so there's a number of things you can look at when you want to study elephants. So the big one is we want to have baby elephants. And the reason behind this is because the more baby elephants we have, the population of elephants can continue to grow and be around for you all as you get older. And so this is really interesting, but it is a lot of work. So one thing we track is elephant pregnancies and how long they're carrying a baby for. So elephants have a 22-month gestation period. So 22 months is almost 2 years that they're carrying a baby and growing a baby inside them. So we can help monitor this by measuring hormones, which are little chemicals in your body that kind of make your body work. And so these are called things like progesterone, cortisol, and testosterone. So we can track progesterone specifically to track pregnancy. Testosterone is generally the main hormone for males. And then we also track things like cortisol, which is the hormone that wakes you up in the day and gets you moving and active. So they're all really important to keep track of, because the more you know about the animals, especially the elephants in zoos, the better care they can receive, and we can know what's going on with them beyond what we can just see.
We also work with a lot of baby elephants. Do you want to tell us a little bit about baby elephants, like how big they are, when they can walk? Do you know that stuff?
So baby elephants, when they are born, they look very, very small next to their mom, but they outweigh most human beings. They weigh anywhere between 250 to 300 pounds when they are first born. So very, very large babies. And like it says on the screen, they have a 22-month gestation period. So it takes them a very long time to grow to that big.
Do they walk right away when they're born?
It takes a little bit for them to kind of get their strength going and get their legs figured out, but mom will help them stand up. So within a few hours, they are moving with their mom and they'll rejoin the herd.
That's pretty awesome. Are elephants endangered or are they safe in the wild?
So both African and Asian elephants are endangered, and what that means is their populations in the wild are decreasing. And so that's part of what we do here at For Elephants as well, where we try to the more we know about them, the more we can do to help protect them and keep, have more babies and keep elephants around for a long time.
That's awesome. Do you guys want to talk about your projects at all and what we're studying? Because this is mostly a student-run organization, and so we each have different projects that we're working on. So Lindy, do you want to talk about your project?
Yeah, so I'm finishing up my degree right now, and so my study specifically looked at cortisol levels and then compared it to giving them things like trees and branches and leaves, stuff like that, and so seeing if that was a way to help manage their cortisol levels. So that was kind of what my study was focused around.
Mackenzie, do you want to talk about your study?
Yeah, so my study focuses on bulls. So like I talked about earlier, I feel like they have a really important part in elephant reproduction. And so I will be looking at body conditioning, so seeing what an elephant looks like and if it is a healthy weight. And so I'm seeing what bulls look like at various times in their life where they're putting on extra weight and what a healthy bull should look like.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about body index and what that means?
So body index scoring is a way that we can look at animals and tell how healthy they are. If you guys have pets at home and if you take it to the vet, your vet may have a sign up that shows whether your dog or cat is too skinny or too fat or just right. So just like that, we want other animals to have similar things so we can look at them and know whether we're feeding them too much, too little, and how we can vary that to make sure we continue to have healthy, good weight animals.
Awesome. And my project is kind of like Lindy's, so I'm thinking about cortisol too, which is the hormone that wakes you up, but I'm also thinking about dehydroepiandrosterone, which is the hormone that sort of is the opposite of cortisol and kind of helps slow you down, and how that ratio between dehydroepiandrosterone and cortisol can help us look more accurately at what's going on in these elephants in the zoo during the day and throughout the year. But I think that's pretty much all we have for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have more questions, you can definitely reach out to us and maybe we'll send along an email and your parents can help you formulate some questions and send them over and we can answer those for you guys. Anything else?
Great, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys.